Amen. I guess I remember how to ride the bicycle. That was fun. I enjoyed that. I hope you enjoyed that, but more importantly, I hope that you will be changed by it. Okay? And again, if anybody wants to say that was any of me in that was just Peter, and Peter. Okay? All I did was read you what he said and point out things that you could easily miss, but he still said it. Like the if need be part. I missed that the first 75 times I read it, and then it hit me today. Whoa. And I read it past it a couple of times even today. Hold on, if need, why would you need trials? That was good. Thank you. Appreciate you giving me that thought right as I almost skipped over that. But that's what it takes. You have to be open as you're reading to not just read the parts you think and guess. Because we do this. We try to guess where he's going. And we can miss some of the pieces along the way. That little if need be. You know what? You want to live your life so that you don't if need be. Then you won't have the trials. I mean, if you're doing what you're supposed to be doing, there is no need to be in a trial.
I just had the thought when you were saying you didn't understand how the Christians deal with, he's going to consider their works. Well, I remember the point where I went from the Christian way of thinking of judgment to understanding that it was more than that. And so I have some perspective. The Christianese is judgment is all negative. There's no positive judgment. So if you're being judged, you're being condemned. They're synonymous. That's the putting together of two different ideas that aren't connected, but they connect them.
Right. Okay.
And so that's how they deal with judgment. It's condemnation. It's synonymous. And so when I first discovered that judgment was something positive to be desired, I was like, huh? And it took me a while to wrap my brain around it, but I finally got there.
Well, that's why Romans 2 is so important, because Paul says very clearly that judgment can go in both directions. Okay, we read that a couple of times. He says that some will be judged to eternal life and some will be judged to condemnation and wrath. I mean, they're both being judged, though, according to their works. Some are going to receive, and the others are going to receive the other. So some receive eternal life, some receive, the wrath from above. This still, it says everyone will be before the judgment seat. But I can see then that if that's what Christianity does, that would make sense. I think when they see the word judgment, they think that's only for those that are not saved. Yeah. Okay? All right. This doesn't make any sense, but okay. All right. CC?
Wow. I just want to say thank you. I feel like Kifa has reached through time and slapped me upside the head. So I want to thank you for that, because
I think that's what he meant too, because he wrote it to be read in the dispersion.
Yeah, really, it made me really realize I'm not taking this seriously enough. Wow.
Yeah.
I really need to get my act together.
Amen.
So thank you.
Amen. Look, I think that through the way we've been indoctrinated, there's a certain level of entitlement mentality. And so once you feel like you're chosen, you don't really feel like there's an expectation that you do a whole lot, just as long as I do enough or this or whatever skating by means or whatever in your own mind. But the idea of all your effort, all your thoughts, all your heart, we just don't understand that. Why? Because our desires are pulling us in all kinds of other directions. We want, we crave, we desire, and that's stuff that's corruptible is going to fade. It's not. By corruptible, I don't even mean it's bad stuff. It's just it's not going to take you anywhere, get you anywhere. I mean, some of the stuff isn't bad in itself. It's only bad if you're going to spend, 8 hours a day doing it and not doing anything else. Some of that stuff could really get you in trouble because of excess, And so you can get distracted easily. I'll give you an example of what that could look like, and it could be very subtle. I went to a conference one time, and it was sponsored by a group that their main focus was praise. Okay? And so at this conference, like a lot of the bigger conferences back in the day, we used to have a lot of these bigger conferences. We don't have them as much anymore. But we had these big conferences and within the Messianic movement, and they would have a couple of speakings from the main stage, and they would have breakout sessions. Okay? And I looked at the schedule of the breakout sessions, and there was lots of them, 4 or 5 going on at a time, at all times. And it was over 70% of the sessions were praise. Not instructional, like flag making, banner making, flag waving, Hebraic dance. I mean, there's not anything wrong with those things, but there was an imbalance. 75% of all classes were non-instructional in terms of the word, about changing your life. It was the fun stuff. I'm not saying he wants us to praise, so don't get me wrong, but where's the balance? So you could do the same thing. You could spend all day listening to praise music and singing and dancing and all that kind of great stuff, but is that enough? It'd be like having a diet of just dessert. Dessert in itself won't hurt you necessarily or that, but what if only you ate dessert? You didn't eat any main courses, you didn't have any vegetables and other things and fruits and stuff. What if you didn't eat other stuff, but all you ate was dessert? Okay? You would have a lack somewhere. And so we desire, and sometimes we don't desire a bad thing, but out of balance, it becomes a problem. So we have to even think that, because some of us have convinced ourselves, oh, but I spend all my time focused, but how are you doing it? Are you doing it in an appropriate way, in a balanced way? Just think about those things. Because, I mean, it was amazing how many people did not even see the fact that there was no teaching coming from the main stage, like Torah teaching. There was like just a small percentage of the breakout sessions with Torah teaching. It was incredible. And then I'll give you more of the story. So at this conference, I was there, Ralph Messer was there, Monty Judah was there, Eddie Chumney was there. Think of anybody else that you would know. Reggie White was there, the football player. This was his coming out party as being a Messianic, and then he died a few months later. And I got to go to the room Saturday night of the conference. No, I guess it was Friday night of the conference, whatever. They had a meeting, and I got myself invited to the meeting because I knew the guy running. I knew somebody who knew the guy running the conference. And I said, my friend Dominic, who passed, I said, Dominic, get me to the meeting. I want to talk to these guys. So I got invited. I was sort of the new kid, and they didn't know me that well. And so I got to go up there, and they're all talking, and they were all really whining about the fact they didn't have enough money because they spent hundreds and thousands of dollars, whatever, on sound equipment and special lights so that the praise would all look great. Okay, but they didn't have the money for all this. Okay, so it was all on a big production show. And so I eventually got my hand up, and I said, excuse me, I just want to ask a question. I said, you've got over about 2,000 people coming to this conference, huge, by Messianic standards, okay? And I said, most of them, a lot of them are Christians because they're coming because they want to learn how to wave banners and flags and dance and sing. They're not interested in Torah teaching, but they're here because they know you're promoting all these classes, okay? I said, what about taking advantage of the bully pulpit and having some basic Torah taught from the main stage? I mean, introductory Torah. You've got all these people here. How about teach them about Sabbath and feasts and some basic stuff? Identity of Israel, know who you are, something. They looked at me like I had 4 heads. I'm not kidding. Shut up, kid, who are you? You know, because this is like 2001, all right? So this is a while ago. I still wasn't a kid, I was 38, but, you know. Okay? But they didn't know me that well. Okay, I'd only been doing this a little while compared to them. They knew each other. And so that was the sad thing. And actually, I don't even think I said, why don't you do it right now at this conference? I said, well, how about next year, put it on the schedule? Why don't you plan, because these people are all coming, to do some basic Torah teaching from the main stage? No, the guys who get on the main stage say a whole bunch of stuff that you go home and said, wow, I enjoyed that. I don't remember a thing he said, and it did nothing for my life. I'm not picking on some of the bigger name guys that go to conferences, but I know what they do from the main stage. Nothing useful generally, although they're good polished speakers, so you go, wow, I enjoyed that. Okay, but enjoyed it means, well, who cares if you enjoy it? I'll tell you what, when I get up and speak, I never care whether or not you enjoy it. I want to know if you're going to be impacted by it. Okay? I don't care if you enjoy it. I don't want to hear something that I enjoy either when I go to these places. I want you to kick me in the teeth and wake me up and slap me in the side of the face and say, you need to be impacted by this. This is what Abba wants you to do. Start doing it. That's just me. That's I teach the way I want to hear it. So if you wonder why I teach this way, it's because if I was sitting there, that's what I'd want to hear. I'd want to hear somebody grab me by the shirt and say, wake up. That's why I appreciate what CC said, because that was the goal. And it was really the goal that she got it from Peter, not from me. That was great. What I got was that Kiefer's here smacking me and waking me up. Good, because almost everything I said was him. There was almost nothing of me. I just kind of emphasized some of the things he said.
Amen.
Okay? Okay, but that's where this thing really gets all messed up, is that, we can spend our time on lots of things and think we're doing great stuff when really we're not doing what we need to do. Spend less time on those things and more time. Balance yourself better. You need to do a time spending assessment to go ahead and look at yourself and see how you're allocating your time. Your time allocation, I would guarantee that everyone in this room needs to reallocate their time. Without exception. I would say everybody would probably be able to go home and say, you know what? I probably need to reallocate my time. All right, where's the mic? Okay, Nate?
Regarding the learning to be set apart, and if need be, and the crucible, the fire that we need to go through, moving down here was a double-edged sword for me. Yeah, we really want to come down here. We want to be with our brothers and sisters. I want to sit under Rabbi and learn from him how to be what I need to be. And that's all well and good. But the downside of that is I'm going to be exposed, And sometimes that can be scary because I know that I have parts of me that need exposure, but I want to be in that set apart place. I want my family to be in that set apart place. And that's where we learn to rub against each other. And once the honeymoon is over, that's when that fire, that proving comes. And so I just want to encourage all of you, as I was sitting here listening to Peter through Rabbi, I was thinking of, when we think about, on the men's Marco Polo, they're talking about Samson before Sukkot. And there's one guy, his name is David Hughes. He's already Samson. He's already beat everybody. He doesn't even need to do a workout. But I'm thinking about I think about the workout and the results at the end of it. Boy, if I could really work out all the way through that, man, I'd be in really great shape. But I'm thinking about that. That sounds really good. But it's the going through the crucible of doing that every day, in and out, to try to get to where I need to be or feel like I'm healthy. And Dave was mentioning, look, if you want to get as big as I am, you got to do this every day. And if we could learn to walk in Torah and receive that with joy, as Rabbi was stating through Tevye, and just be excited about that part, boy, what we would be as a body, learning to work together and walk together and become and build the body, what we would look like 10, 15 years from now. Not only that, but our kids who have gone through the fire with us, learning how to walk appropriately.
Amen. Amen. And that's one of the things that, the guys are challenging each other to get in better shape. But you know what? When we watch the Marco Polos, there's only 2 guys every day that post from their workout. Both Davids. Okay? That's what they're doing, And so there's a commitment. Look, I used the example in the past many times of an Olympic athlete. What do they do to commit every day of their life between when they decided they wanted to be a gold medalist till the day they get on the stand? Or at least to their event in the Olympics. They have committed all their time, all their focus, all their effort towards one goal. Okay? I'm not a big fan of the Olympics necessarily, but I love the metaphor, the imagery, that you can actually see what it looks like. That's what you could see, what it looks like to see someone with a singleness of purpose and how they focus all of their time, especially when you then, and they do this more and more now because of the way the media is, and my wife loves this stuff, especially when they tell the backstories. Okay? Because that's more the relational stuff. See, that's more the blue, I'm red, I don't really care. But I just want to see them win or lose, I don't care. But she likes to hear about how they grew up and how they spent their lives and how they started when they were 3 and how they had to give up on their friends and they had to eat the commitments that you see in those stories. Well, what's your story? We're going for a crown. We're going for a prize. What is your effort? What is your story going to look like of how much effort you put into getting to that incorruptible place? Or how much did you spend distracted? I never was one of these guys, but I had a lot of friends. Boy, I'll tell you what, they worked all day, came home, and right away, whatever game went on, the sports. And they were watching, whether it was baseball, basketball, whatever it was, hockey, they were watching, And I was a limited sports fan. I only watched one sport really, and it was one that was very limited, and I only played once a week. I watched football. So it didn't take up much of my life, okay? Only 16 games a year, once a week. But I knew guys who were basketball and baseball fans, and those guys are watching games every day. And so how many hours of their lives is focused on this thing? Well, what is your equivalent? Okay? By the way, working out could be the same problem. There are some people obsessed with their health in a way that becomes all-encompassing instead of just enough to keep them healthy. You don't need to put 4, 5, 6, 8 hours a day into studying it. Okay? You just apply it, walk it, do what you do, etc. But there's got to be balance. Okay, there's got to be balance. Now, maybe you spend more time when you're first learning something, that's fine. But where do you can find yourself lost, though, in losing the balance if you don't ever bring yourself back in. You got to be able to make sure you rein yourself back in. That's why I have a problem with a lot of these fringe things, the shape of the earth, the nature of the Godhead, the politics, whatever it is that people are going to, the conspiracy, quote unquote, things, because that, for a lot of people, becomes a time-immersed, huge time stealer. Okay? It doesn't really accomplish anything, but it steals time. I don't care which side you're on. Most of you, whatever side you're on any of these topics, will end up spending hours watching more of that kind of video and those kind of things and people talking about it, proving it, and arguing it than you will Torah. And so it's a time stealer. Don't let it be a time stealer. I'm not judging your opinions, and I don't care which way you think about any of these things. Be careful that it doesn't steal your time by becoming obsessive. Okay? If when you meet people, you find yourself wanting to and talking to people more about that than about normal Torah stuff, it's become a problem. If you're hoping to get that conversation, if that's what you're hoping for. I'm hoping to talk Torah. I'm not hoping to talk about some of these other things. But if you're hoping the conversation will give you an opening to get into your little thing, calendar, whatever it is, okay? Some people turn whatever little thing that they're some people are super excited about Enoch, Jubilees, whatever it is, so they want to find excuses to get into that. That's fine on some levels, but be careful if it's become bigger than this, okay? Don't lose your balance. So I didn't say any of that stuff was wrong. Did you catch that? Be careful and monitor yourself. Look in that mirror and know what you're doing. Do that time allocation study. Figure out where you're spending your time. Also, monitor your mind. When you start talking to me, we sit down during Oneg and we're talking, you're talking to anybody, think about it. Is it somewhere in the back of your mind hoping you're going to get something in or to get the topic switched in a direction so you can get to what you want? And is that thing you want one of these side issues or a core issue? I'm only waiting for core issues. Otherwise, I don't even need to be in the room because I'm not a social guy. Sorry to tell you that, but most of you know that anyway. But some of you think I'm social because you see me in groups talking a lot and interacting with people. That's when I'm doing this. When I'm talking some core stuff, when I'm dealing with people's growth and their issues and their transformation into the image of Yeshua issues, I'll sit there all day and all night. But you just want to talk about fishing or some other thing, I'll be like, I don't know how to do that. And it's not because I'm against you talking about that. Do that with somebody else. Not because you're wasting my time or yours. It's just I only have one focus, and that's this. Pretty much. I mean, I know sometimes I'll get occasionally off on something, but very rare. It's really more or less this. So that doesn't mean the other stuff that you do is wrong or bad. Is it in balance? Okay? I have no problem. You want to talk about a movie you saw, a book you read, fishing, sports, politics, anything. Is it in balance? That's only up to you to figure out. All right? All right, where's the mic? Go ahead.
As you, my discipler, already know, not everybody necessarily knows, I get easily distracted by entertainment, whether it be games, movies, whatever, and end up binge watching or binge playing. And I was remembering something when you were talking about the desires, both the good desires and the bad desires, that there's a scripture in Psalm 119, verse 16, and it talks about, I will delight myself in your statutes, I will not forget your word. And it's very interesting and plain that way, but when you take it into the Hebrew word underlying it, when I looked it up, it basically is talking about a toy. It's talking about the pleasure a child has when it's playing with its toy. So it's basically turning your decrees, his decrees, into my playthings. is what I do. This is who I am, and I get entertainment out of it, and I get joy out of it. It's not a skullduggery that I have to do this now. And so that's one of the things I have to remember and keep in mind when I'm wanting entertainment. Is like, okay, well, yes, you do have those things that you like, but you have something else that you need to get much more close and intimate with and obtain joy from.
Amen. Look, we read this today, and this is what I want to emphasize, where it says that you're putting aside, but then you're also desiring. In other words, you have to replace whatever you're putting out. Okay? So when I'm working with him, one of the things we talked about the other day, because his obsessiveness with the things he was doing was causing him to not get the right sleep, and then he was going to end up being late for work and all these other things. I said, what you need to do is you got to stop doing that, but you have to replace it with something. Okay? You can't just leave a vacuum. Okay? Nature doesn't like vacuums. It likes to fill them up with stuff. Can we all agree? You understand that? So you can't leave a vacuum. You have to replace it. So it says, like we read here, having put aside, chapter 2 and verse 1 of 1 Peter, all these things, he says, as newborns, then desire to put something in. You have to then exchange. Okay? So you have to then say, okay, I'm spending way too much time doing this, so now what do I do instead? Especially what can I do that will make me feel similar, because it's your emotions and your desires that are driving why you do that anyway. All right? You do what you do because you like it. That's just, it's not bad. I shouldn't have even said it with that, like it. You do what you do because you like it. You enjoy it. So find something you enjoy as much that's more appropriate, that brings balance. Okay? Because it's not that what you like is necessarily bad. It's just maybe not necessarily do it for as many hours a day as you do. It's taking up too much time proportionally. So find a way to replace it with something else. And, but you think, I don't like that as much. Well, then figure out why you don't like it as much and how you can like it more. Okay, that's the bigger issue, is figuring out and understanding what the problem is with how much you like it, how much you don't like it, and why. All right? Well, I appreciate that. And now that I see you two sitting together, I just realize how much you look like each other. But that's okay. Sorry, just two sisters I haven't seen actually physically together, and I see them sitting together. Like, wow, you look like each other a lot. All right, sorry, Wayne, go ahead.
Yeah, I've been coming to the realization that trials are not meant to be grieved, that trials are meant to be joyful, no matter what it is, good or bad, because it's all going to end up in praise and respect and esteem.
That's why James tells us, count it joy,
yes,
that you're in a trial.
Yes. And I have been coming to that realization, and I thank Abba every day for every trial that he gives me. And
Amen.
And if you're wondering, I encourage, if you're one of them people that keep going through a trial and not knowing what it's for, pray to him, ask him to show you what it means, and he will. He'll show that to you. I just wanted to share that.
Amen. Amen. And probably part of the reason you don't know about why these trials are happening is because you're not ready to receive the answer. You don't want to hear that the problem is the problem. Because some of you at some point will come to me and will come and discover it and be like, no, that's not it. I'm like, well, hold on a second. Maybe that is it. Oh, no. Well, now the more you're doing that, the more I'm sure it is. Okay? That's part of the problem too. Don't just ask him to show it to you. Ask him that you are open to receive it when he shows it to you. Because he may be sitting back going, I've been showing it to you. I've been screaming it at you, but you're not listening. Okay? And so there are things that the reason you won't see them, ones that you won't see, is because it's going to require you to change something you're not ready to change. Just remember that. The reason you can't see some things that you should is because it's happening at a time when you're dealing with whatever it is and you're not ready to let it go. Or make that change, or there's a fear issue. You're afraid, well, if I make this change, what's going to happen? What if people don't like me? What if people get mad at me? What if I lose my job? What if this happens? What if that happens? Look, if you've got a cavity in your tooth, you can stay away from the dentist all you want. It's not going to change the fact you got a cavity in your tooth. But what if I go and this happens? Well, what if you don't go? It just gets worse and worse and worse. My wife had that experience. Didn't deal with something. It should have. Hey, it ended up being a lot bigger problem, right? Okay? It was a tooth thing. It was a simple thing. But, you ignore something or you want to ignore it. Better to deal with it sooner than later and deal with it straight up, even if you don't know or don't like the possible consequences, because not dealing with it almost always will be worse. Okay, so listen to what Wayne said. Take that as an encouragement. We all have those experiences. We're like, you know what? It's kind of like the old commercial. I don't know if you had those commercials, but I remember in New York, we had these old commercials about just go ahead and changing your oil in your oil filter. He says, you can pay me now, or you can pay me later when you need a new engine. Remember those commercials? All right? That's kind of what it's like. Deal with it, even if you don't want to now. Well, it's not convenient, and I got to go do this, and blah, blah, blah. Well, it's not going to be any less convenient when it's a bigger problem. It's going to be more inconvenient when it's a bigger problem.
Hello. Shabbat Shalom.
Okay, hey, Beverly.
Hi, Wayne, correct? Wayne was saying something about
You got to put that right up by your mouth.
having joy through your trials. And as my friend here knows, I have had a very hard time with the situation with my house. And I realize, though I don't want to admit it, and so you guys don't hear me say this, okay? Just act like you don't hear me. My issue is that I've always controlled everything around in my life, and I'm very good at being by myself. And I generally can think of what I need to do to correct whatever it is I'm doing, because I'm
Right.
a very controlled person. But this particular situation that's going on in my home, I have no idea. I have no concept. It just does not compute. And just to have friends in my life that are a part of this congregation, I guess that's the term I would use. Mm-hmm. I've never had anyone to just come to my rescue. And I don't know if I want to say rescue, but
To be there for you and to help you. Yep.
It changed my whole life because I couldn't accept it, but I knew Abba wanted me to accept it. And, excuse me, I'm still emotional.
But you can see the if need be. You needed to go through this to let go that obsessive control. So that's where we get back to that verse, the little piece that I almost skipped, the if need be.
Yeah. He's teaching me how to accept and to have friends.
Amen.
And that's just not what I usually do.
Yeah. And then you even asked for a covering, and you're going to deal with that too. You could ask Sarah Beth and Dewey just how fun that is at times. But see, he's stretching us to where we need to get to. And mostly he's stretching us in the areas we're out of balance. Okay? The independence and the control are not bad things. They were just out of balance. And so there was a lack that was there that needed to be brought to, so hey, we'll give you something you can't do yourself and you have no idea what to do and you need to get help. Okay? And so that's him, that's the if need be. See, I knew that verse was going to come in real handy. That's one of the examples of what it looks like. There was a need that he needed to put you through to get something exposed to be dealt with. Where's the mic? Okay, Stephanie?
Okay, bear with me, because at the very end of what you were talking about, you emphasized the tasted. And for whatever reason, I'm kind of going through this trail. It made me think of the manna in the wilderness. Mm-hmm. What would the Israelites have tasted? They would have tasted the manna. What was the manna called? What manna means? What is this? And then I was going through and looking at the fact that every reference in this particular passage to the word had kind of a food reference. You have the milk of the word, and there's like a food reference. So it's kind of like we're sitting there, and then also the last verses that you're reading, having put aside all these other things that are not of the word, right? So you're putting aside all these other things, and he's wanting you to taste the milk of the word, and he wants you to, and he asks if you've tasted it, and I'm sitting there going, okay, so they're tasting something that in the wilderness would have been a what is this kind of thing, and so he's really asking them to kind of go away from all those things that you've adulterated it and come back to the what is this, and to taste it, and in some ways, much of what you teach us. Try it, do it, see what the results are.
Right.
But anyway, I just went on this, so bear with me. I'm sorry.
I appreciate it. That's good. That's good. Look, I'm going to use a direct example to kind of feed off what you said. When I was first working with these two, I told them, I said, you got nothing to lose from where you are right now. Why don't you give me 6 months or a year, whatever it was I said, 6 months, right? You got nothing to lose where you're at now, because they were having, really serious problems. They're not shy to talk about it. And I said, so taste of it, because I know you don't trust leadership, you don't believe leadership. Well, if you're right, you'll know very quickly. And if you're wrong, it just might work. Okay? So why not but you had a taste of it. Okay? And that's the only way that, but we're so afraid. Because we're all about what if, and we only think the negative side. Well, what if it worked? What if it's good? What if it fixes a problem? What if it actually solves and resolves something that you've had struggled your whole life to solve and resolve? What if something good came out of it? But see, we are so blinded by our fear of the possible negative. Well, I'm just going to be disappointed again, and it's going to be like this other experience, and blah, 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 blah. But you know what? They went from zero interest in anything leadership whatsoever to they're now moved here. Because they tasted of something, not because I'm so great, but because it was him utilizing that role that they needed in their life, and they tasted of him through that. So I never want this to become that it had anything to do with me. I was just trying to be that, what I promised them the word says, and show them that it could be better than what they experienced. But what Stephanie was pointing out, you have to taste it though. If you don't try it, how are you going to know? What's it going to cost you to give it a shot? Well, I'll lose 6 months. But you're already going to have a miserable next 6 months if you do nothing. You already know what it's going to be the next 6 months. Because if you don't change anything, right, keep doing what you're doing, expecting different results, it's the definition of crazy. At least one of them, insanity. So, you already know, because it's kind of like the people who used to drive me crazy to go to take a test when I was in high school. And they would be all nervous. I'm going to fail. I don't know. I said, why are you all upset? I said, did you study? No. So I bet you if I asked you what grade you're going to get, you could tell me right now. Yeah, I'm probably going to get a 75. I said, okay, so why are you upset? Now's not the time to get upset. You know what you're going to get. They look at me like, how come you're not upset? Because I know exactly what I'm going to get. I know I know how much I studied. And by the way, I didn't study a whole lot. I'm just saying, but I knew what I was going to get. I wasn't going to get upset about it. I already made that bed. I'm laying in it. I mean, we have to understand if you don't make a change, then nothing actually changes. Boy, that was so subtle, And so what does change look like? It means tasting of something different, doing it. You got to try it. You got to try it. Otherwise, you'd never know. All right, Dawn.
Thank you. My mind blown. I have, how men think and they think in boxes and they stay there. My spaghetti brain is all over the universe at the moment. One thing I just wanted to touch on, more of a question. I think it's verse 2, where it talks about the set apart by the Spirit. And I know that when I first read it, having years in the Christian church, my mind went, oh, that's the entity. How can he explain that? And then I remembered your a definition of it kind of being like a cell phone and the Spirit not being an entity. Can you just, for the sake of all of those that I know are out there going, it's proof, could you just clarify that little piece? And then I have something else after that.
Absolutely. No, I mean, I would have mentioned this earlier when I first went through it. I kind of skipped through a couple of things in verse 2 quickly just because I didn't want to take a whole lot of time, and I knew this was going to take a while. All right, so look, what did we talk about Spirit being? His intrinsic nature, right? Didn't we talk about that in the teaching on the Ruach? It's basically the intrinsic nature of something, the spirit of something, okay? The ultimate fulfillment of the fullness of the intent. Okay, so he says here that we were chosen, set apart by the fullness of what he intended, by his intrinsic nature unto obedience. He gave us of his nature with the idea that it would help us to be obedient, that we could do that fullness. So, I mean, it's not complicated if you go back to the definition that we came up with through our study of the teaching on the Ruach. Does that make sense now?
Yes.
Okay? So again, it says, chosen according to the foreknowledge of the Elohim the Father, set apart by what? We're set apart by us being him, by being indwelled by his nature. That nature then manifests obedience, because his nature is obedience. Our nature is all over the map. Did that answer the question simply enough?
Yes.
Okay. All right.
The other thing is, you were talking about the trials by fire, and how he basically heats up our heart. And the trials, if I'm understanding correctly, going through trials is revealing what our heart is made of, if it's made of wax or clay. Like I remember he allowed Pharaoh's heart to be hardened, but that's because his heart was made of clay to begin with. If we have little pieces of clay in us, he's warming it up, he's taken out the clay so that we can sufficiently be molded to his image as we are heated up and poured into his image and becoming more like him. So the fire by trial is a really good thing, and we're taking steps to become more like him in that. Yes?
Yes, I mean, I just would not necessarily try to specifically quantify clay versus this versus that. The point of the fire is that fire reveals by bringing all of the elements that are inside of something out. Like in the gold, embedded in there are these pieces that don't belong and that aren't actually gold. So when you heat it up, all of that stuff will come out. So the fire brings out what's in there that doesn't need to be. It reveals, it exposes, it brings to the surface. Use whatever metaphor you want, okay? So it's really a matter of that. Now, in Pharaoh's case, it was different. In Pharaoh's case, he wasn't going through a fire. What he did was he strengthened Pharaoh's heart in the direction it already wanted to go, because he wasn't done doing what he was doing with Pharaoh, okay? So that wasn't a fiery trial situation per se. But what happened was, because of the trial, sometimes our trial does, what it reveals is that we're just going to quit, run away, or do something else. Pharaoh was ready to quit and run away, even though that's not what he really wanted. So he was in a trial because of the plagues. His reaction was not to do what he really wanted, was just to quit, run away, because he was scared at the moment. And so he got a strengthening from Yahweh, because he said, no, you really don't want to let them go yet. You're not ready to let them go. This is not, I've not revealed everything through you I want to reveal yet. Okay, so that's why I don't like the idea of hardened, because it makes it sound like, well, Pharaoh wanted to let them go. Yahweh was the problem. No, Pharaoh didn't want to let them go. The Hebrew really is better translated, he was strengthening them in the way he wanted to go. But when it comes to us, the fiery trial is a metaphor for bringing to the surface, revealing, purging, cleansing. It's going to bring all the impurities out where we can see them, and then hopefully we scoop them off the top like you would the slag or the dross or whatever, when you kind of, you understand what I'm saying? Okay? So, yeah, you could use metaphors like sand and all this other. Look, we have that for foundations and building on the sand, on the dirt, on clay, on rock. I mean, all of that ends up being really good metaphors in a lot of cases. I don't want you to get too caught up on that in the fire thing. Fire is just something that's going to burn away everything that's not what it's supposed to be and bring it out. Okay, that's what Wayne was talking about. Embrace and understand that you're in a trial. If you're open to it, it should reveal a thing that needs to be fixed in you. Okay? And actually, Nate, while he's going around, I'm going to say that one of the things that I do appreciate is that in seeing the three of them sit next to each other, thankfully, they all look like her.
Yes, thanks. Talk about the hair, right?
Nate's in full agreement. Well, I just realized I got the three in a row right there, so, you know. All right, where'd the mic end up?
Right.
Okay, Kurt.
All right, I had Corey asking, so I have cancer on my spine because I'm not listening to something?
Nobody said that cancer was a fiery trial, okay? Time and chance happen to all people. Sometimes we go through trials that are just really hard to go through. The cancer is not, let's be careful of our cause and effect. He allows you to go through things for reasons, that are not always reasons that we can understand. But if we look at the thing that you're going through, it could reveal there's something in you that you can work on because he allowed you to go through it. Don't think that he caused it because you did something bad or wrong. Remember the guy who, the Messiah and his disciples walked by, and they were like, well, who sinned, him or his parents? He said, nobody. He was left this way just so I can heal him in front of you guys. Okay, so let's not always look to, see, that's also that I think came out of sort of mainstream Christian thought to some degree. You know, if something, you know, you stubbed your toe, oh, what'd you do wrong? You must have done something. Or something else happens, you know, it must have been sin that caused everything. Look, cancer happens to a lot of people. It's not something that you look at cause and effect to say this because you did something wrong or not. Okay, however, you're being allowed to go through this trial because there's something that you can grow and learn from through it. Okay? It could be because of your way that you handle it, you'll be able to bless somebody else that's having trouble not handling the same problem. There's all kinds of things that could be positive, growing results when he allowed you to go through this problem. So it's a matter of that. It's not so much he gave you cancer because you did something wrong. All right? Hopefully that answers that question.
All right, next question is, when you feel like you have set your desire on him, how do you deal with repeated or regular temptations and questioning whether or not your desire is truly on him?
All right, read that one more time. I think I know where that's going. Right. Say it one more time.
Yeah, when you feel like you have set your desire on him, how do you feel with repeated or regular temptations and questioning whether you, questioning whether or not your desire is truly on him?
Okay, so the problem that you have is that you do not have, and don't take this wrong, but this is for everybody, because that happens to all of us. Why? We lack self-control. Okay? That's one of those things that we read in, let me see if I can read it to you here real quick. Okay, if you look at 2 Peter chapter 1, he goes, for this reason, verse 5, do your utmost to add to your belief uprightness, to uprightness knowledge, to knowledge self-control. See, some of you get caught at this point getting to the self-control part, okay? Because you've already got a certain amount of belief, and the belief you're starting to do uprightness, and you're getting knowledge and everything else, but you lack discipline, okay? And the reason you lack this, you don't have the discipline to examine why you still desire those things that you shouldn't desire. Because you said, well, I mean, you know, am I really trying to focus? Do I really believe and focus on him when I keep being distracted by these other things? Well, the answer is yes. You may still have a real desire to focus on him, but you haven't dealt with the putting aside part. Remember, he said in 1 Peter, he said, put aside these things. Well, you're not going to put it aside if you still want it. It's hard to, you know, take something and go, okay, well, this pen, okay, well, I'm going to put it, I'll just put it in my pocket. No, get rid of it. Put it aside. Oh, well, I'll just put it in a drawer. Maybe I'll, you know. Well, why is it in the drawer? Because I still want it. So I could get it there later. Why did you throw it out? Why leave it there? Well, you know. No. Do you know? Don't tell me, well, you know. How well do you know yourself? Why are you doing it? So what I would say to that person is, and this goes for everybody, we all struggle with the same thing. So please don't take it personally. Everybody in this room has the same problem on some level. You need to figure out how to get yourself to be honest about the things that you're doing and how much you desire them, because you're only doing them because you want to. Everything you do that you shouldn't do, you do because you want to. Don't tell me otherwise. If you didn't want to, you wouldn't do it. Everything I struggle with, I want to do. Not consciously. Unconsciously, I don't want to do it. But there's still a part that I have not dealt with where I desire it, or I wouldn't do it. Okay? Let's take Rabbi Tom for an example. Rabbi Tom quit smoking. You know how he did it? He made a decision he didn't want it anymore. But until then, he kept smoking. Everybody who tries to quit fails because they don't want to quit. Stop trying, quit. I sound like Yoda. There is no try, there's only do. Okay?
Rabbi Yoda.
I would do the voice more accurately, but it hurts my throat. I can do it, but it always kills my throat. So that was my best shot without hurting my throat. And after talking this much, I don't want to do that. But that's the whole point. He made such a great point when he said to him, he said, there is no try. Why do you try? Because you really don't want to. Okay? Make a decision. Okay? And I've never smoked, but I tell every smoker the same thing. They all look at me like, what do you know? You never smoked. I said, but I know a lot of people that quit. You know what they all did? The same thing. They quit. And when you're ready, you'll quit. Well, guess what? Every bad habit, everything that you know you shouldn't be doing, whatever it is the same. You're addicted on some level, and that desire, that pleasure, whatever it is, no matter how perverse, and I don't mean it has to be sexual, it's just something that's out of whack, so it's perverse. It's something you shouldn't be doing. You know you don't want it up here, you don't like it up here, but you still have that emotion attached to it, you're still drawn to it, so on that visceral level, you like it. And if you don't like the way he said that, then say to yourself that way. He says, you like it. That's why you're doing it. Oh, I don't. All right. So start feeling that way, and you won't want to do it anymore. Every time you go to do it, you go, oh, yeah, see, because you like it. No, I don't. No, I don't. Then why are you doing it? You sicko. Hear that voice in your head next time you go to do that thing. That'll be in focus. You're sick and disgusting. Hey, Rabbi, leave those guys alone. Hey, they're trying to figure it out. All right. But if you're doing those things, we can make you stop doing it. All right. No, but you just got to accept that reality. Okay, so I'm glad that person asked it on the live stream, because we struggle and then we wonder if it's a lack of belief. No, it's not a lack of belief. It's a lack of self-discipline. Okay? You are still refusing to deal with your stuff. Okay? And most of the stuff that we do that we shouldn't do, we do it because it's part of our way of escaping, avoiding, and not dealing with. Okay? So you do those things because they present in your mind emotionally, in your heart emotionally, an escape. All right? And so you got to just decide that it's time to knock it off. So just knock it off. Be done. And I'm not saying it so like it's so simple, because it is that simple, because I still struggle with some things too. Everybody does. And so whatever it is that you struggle with, you've got to get to that point where you're just done. And just be done. And so it's not a lack of faith. It's a lack of just self-discipline. We are such an undisciplined bunch of people. I mean, the human race, through the generations, has gotten more and more undisciplined. And we want the world to accept and actually embrace being undisciplined. This is now to be a goal. Let's just be undisciplined. Let's have no rules, have no nothing, just anything goes. And so this is anybody know the verse that we read today that deals with this? Come on. What did we read today that said exactly what you need for this? How about I'll give you a few more seconds. Girding up the loins of your mind. He knew you were undisciplined. That's what that verse is talking about. See, by the way, that's what the Ruach does. Okay? That was a Ruach moment. I needed a verse. It was in my head. The Ruach gave me the verse that had to do with this. People think that Ruach is like all this other thing. No, it's very simple like that. We read the verse. I'm teaching. I needed that verse. The issue we're dealing with is dealt with by that verse. So the Ruach goes, bing, hey, that verse, the girding of the loin. That's it. That's where the discipline is. He says, gird up the loins of your mind. Because that has to be restrained. That's discipline. We are very undisciplined people. Okay? Very undisciplined people. We have trouble showing up on time anywhere we're supposed to be. That's like the first thing. I'm not just talking to people that were late today here. I'm talking about late to jobs, late to anything. Okay? We're not reliable and disciplined to show up. We're completely undisciplined in our dress. We're undisciplined in our thoughts. We're undisciplined in our mouth and our tongue. We have no discipline, period, in almost every area of our life. And you wonder why we struggle. When you think of a rod of iron, does it think like someone's coming to impose discipline? Okay? Do you know that there's the word discipline and the word disciple? It's like right there. We expect the disciple to walk in a disciplined manner after his teacher in following along. Okay? So just remember that, you sick and you disgusting. But that's really what it is. Now, this is what I don't want you to do, all right? I don't want you to get depressed. I don't want you to beat yourself up and get all depressed. Some of you will do that. You'll feel like you can't do it. You'll feel like a failure. You'll feel like you'll never get there, and you'll get depressed, and you'll beat yourself up. Don't. Just recognize that you're struggling with discipline, that it's going to take a lot of effort. Oh, I hate that, effort. It's going to take effort, a lot of effort, to overcome lifelong addictions. And you're addicted to the thing that you do that you shouldn't do. It's an addiction. You're drawn to it, even though when you do something you know up here in your head you shouldn't do and you do it anyway, it's an addiction. That's my opinion. You are emotionally bound or physically to something that has bound you to that thing that you don't want to do, but you do it anyway. By the way, Paul struggled with this too. He said, that which I want to do, I don't do, and that which I don't want to do, I do. He's human like the rest of us. We all have that. So, first thing to do, own it. All right? Step one. We talked about this in the finance class that we did at Passover. What's step one? Figure out where you're at and own it. I'm where I'm at because I did this. Don't blame everybody. I own this. Oh, but I was raised. Stop that. Okay? You guys are old enough that you could have made other choices by now. Own where you are. Then also own the fact that you can change it. But you got to own it first. As long as you're blaming everybody but you can't fix it. Because then you need somebody else to fix it. After all, they're the cause. If somebody else is the cause, there's only somebody else that can fix it. If you own it, you can fix it. Is that fair? All right, so let's start owning it. All right, I accept. This is me. I'm a sick pervert, and I need to fix that. No. I mean, I just own that I am what I am and that I have this problem and I, for whatever reason, struggle with it. It could be anger. It could be physical, sloth and laziness. It could be, whatever it is that you're struggling with. Physical addictions like drugs or alcohol or smoking, that doesn't matter. Whatever it is, own it. What's the first thing they do at AA? They make you stand up and own it. Isn't that the first thing? It says, I am. Right? Hi, my name is I am. Right? I own this problem. So own your problem. But then they also say, and because I own it, I can fix it. I can choose not to. Right? But you got to own it first. All right. Now that I gave that mini sermon, next. Oh, we're good. All right. Well, it's after 5, so that's good too. Oh, is anybody else? All right, let's go ahead and bring the children in. Oh, wait, Greg's got his hand up. Well, that's okay. Give it to Greg. That's fine. Where'd the mic go? David's got it.
I'm sorry.
I see. You just wanted to make me feel small.
No. The awesome thing that...
And I do own being small, by the way. No. Okay.
A thought that I had, and you would all probably enjoy the trip if you were inside my head, but...
Well, it's probably because the air is thinner.
It could be.
And you're trying to breathe thinner air all the way up there, so...
When Kefa talks about the revelation of Yeshua Messiah, and a couple times he talks about
you got to keep that mic close to the mouth.
And then when you said, what if, on the positive side, it's that effort that it takes to look at something on the positive, no matter how you perceive it as being astronomically negative. That seems like the strength that he wants will translate to what Kefa did as far as walking on the water. I mean, what kind of energy did that take for him to do that and put a perspective on the entire rest of his life? It just seems so awesome.
Awesome. Thank you. Look, the bottom line is, what do you see with the Kefa thing when he walked on the water? He kept his eyes on Yeshua. As long as he kept his eyes on the goal. There's a second thing. We all think of that part. But the second thing is this. There's a very well-known phenomenon, and it happens. There's a lot of studies on the examples of this, where a person can find themselves caught up in a moment and doing things they don't normally are able to do until their brain goes, wait a minute, I'm not good at this, or I'm not able to do this. There was a story about a guy who was paired up, and it was a local golf pro. and he had to play in an open, so he was able to play even though he wasn't one of the professionals. And he ended up making it to like the bigger day at the end there, and he's paired up with one of the best players in the world. And then, all of a sudden one of his friends was like, look at you're playing with so-and-so. I mean, you're not that good or whatever. Whatever it is, somehow his brain was like, it was incongruent to think he was on that level. Guess what? He played awful that day to get to his level of where his mind was. Okay? And so Peter focused on Yeshua. He's walking on the water. But at some point, not only did he take his eyes off Yeshua, he thought to himself like, I can't do this. I'm not able to walk on water. What am I doing? Okay? So we have to be careful about how our thoughts do those kind of things. Keep our eye on the prize, but also take the encouragement that the prize is being offered to you because you have everything you need to get there. Let me rephrase that. You have everything available that you need. You don't necessarily have it in yourself, like you trying to fix everything yourself. Okay? All of you need therapy. You do. Every one of us has lived in this screwed up world. But see, a lot of you will never go get the therapy. You'll never come and talk because you don't want to understand how emotionally arrested you are in your development. You don't want to understand how much your emotions have been wrongly proportioned, like where you're over the top in some areas, under in other areas, because of the way you were raised in culturally and in home and your parenting and your family members and the work experience, whatever brought you to whatever age you're at, you've gotten all kinds of stuff that has molded you incorrectly in your growth emotionally. And then we wonder why we struggle with each other. I mean, I've got people calling me up and they're crying over things. Well, what are you upset about? Well, they can't help themselves. That's the right reaction from where they came from. And there are other people not upset about things they should be upset about. Well, that's because of where they came from. I'm like, why doesn't that bother you? I don't know, it doesn't bother me. Okay? So we all need to finally go out there and get some help from some. It doesn't have to be professional, whatever, but just get somebody who can look at you from the outside and help you sort through, because there's a lot of that stuff is also why we're not growing. Because, you've left churches before, you've left groups before, and guess what you brought every time with you? You. You got to work on changing you, okay? And it's not just a thought process enough. You have to have somebody, the fivefold guys, some of those guys can help you work through that stuff that's like that baggage, that stuff that's sitting on top of your growth and hampering your growth so you can let some of that stuff go, And I've had to do that with a lot of people, and when I've done it with them, I had to say, that's happening again, that thing we talked about. We need to, and then the more that they start to recognize it, the more they start needing me less and seeing it themselves. You guys have seen that, okay? Where I know what some of their issues are, and then I'll start to say, see, that's happening again, okay? And they know, and it's different for him and for her. They have their own things, but each of us has all that, so we all need to get to that place where we can stand up and say, hi, my name is so-and-so, I'm a Hebrew roots, Messianic, whatever, and I'm screwed up and don't know as much as I think I know. Okay? Okay? I need help. Okay? But see, are you willing to get any help? All right? And so, because then when you get through it, it brings the peaceable fruit. If you get through it. And believe me, sometimes the help isn't very peaceable. Ask him for the last couple of days. But he got through it, and that didn't run away. All right? Some of you had similar experiences. If you get through it and don't run away, it brings good fruit. Some of you, I've done not even the fraction that I gave to some of these other guys, and you all folded like a deck of cards and just, like a house of cards, boom, and ran away. Or decided you'll never talk to me again because you don't want to hear straight, strong, what you might need. Because I might hurt your feelings. Well, your feelings are the problem. And if you ask the people I've counseled with, you'll know that I'm not all that concerned about your feelings. I'm concerned about you feeling correctly about things, but not your feelings, okay? Because sometimes those feelings, some of you need to just you don't realize you got your feelings all hanging out. That's embarrassing. Go pick them up and tuck them in. I mean, some of you are all exposed, and pick that all up and put it in your pocket or something. And dragging those feelings out in public. No wonder people are stepping on them. Okay? You're stepping on your feelings because you got them all dragging all over the place. Don't you have any modesty? Goodness, people. stuff is supposed to be inside should stay inside. Stuff outside should be outside. Put that stuff back in. Okay? I mean, we got to be real, right? Okay. Amen. All right, so with that little piece of humor, some of you are thinking about your clothing choices for next week to make sure you're not leaving any feelings hanging out. Some of you are going to be carrying large bags with you for the feelings to be carried in, so they don't just drag on the floor. Shabbat Shalom! Shabbat Shalom! All right, we love you guys. Have a great week. Anybody coming down tomorrow, be safe. And keep on scratching. And ladies, we should have the ladies' coin in about 3 weeks. Did I what?